Welcome to my channel Sci-Fi Love Story. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. The silence of the observation deck stretched for a long moment, broken only by the distant hum of engines and the faint pulse of the stars beyond the viewport. Admiral Trollos of the Keelthrin Dominion had seen many fleets, many battles and many defeats, but he had never witnessed anything like the human who stood in the center of the command platform, unarmed, bleeding, and utterly unafraid. Lieutenant Mara Kalin approached, careful not to startle him. "Admiral, reports from the front lines are inconsistent. Civilians are alive, trade convoys untouched, and yet every strike we've logged shows our enemies were there. How?" Trollos' eyes remained on the figure. "It's the human, Elias Ward. He is the reason." The story had begun hours before, on the remote planet of Lithera. A fragile human scout team had been stationed there to observe alien trade routes, quietly, almost invisibly. But when Lithera's capital city was attacked by the Dominion's Shadow Fleet, intent on destabilizing the entire system, only one human stepped forward. Elias had no armor, no advanced weapons, only a small pulse rifle and a stubborn refusal to retreat. 6 attacks struck him in the span of moments. 6 times, the humans around him expected him to collapse. 6 times, he did not. Each wound tore through him, but he kept moving, kept shielding the alien children and diplomats who had nowhere else to run. By the time the dust settled, every eye in the city and beyond was on him. Not just admiration, but shock. Humans were weak. Humans were fragile. Humans were expendable. And yet, one human had stood against a fleet and lived. That was the beginning of everything. On the deck of the observation station orbiting Lithera, Elias collapsed onto a reinforced chair, breathing heavily, sweat and blood streaking his face. His pulse rifle lay discarded beside him. The Keelthrin soldiers who had been assigned to guard him looked at each other in disbelief. "Sir, he shouldn't have survived that," one whispered. Elias glanced at them, brown eyes sharp even through pain. "You underestimate humans," he said softly, as if speaking a secret. "We survive because we keep moving, because we try again even when it hurts." And the universe had started to notice. The attack had been a test, a warning, or perhaps a gamble. The Dominion believed that humans could be controlled, ignored, or eliminated. But Elias' actions had changed that. Communications networks were flooded with messages from independent colonies, trading stations, and even distant mining outposts. "We saw him. We stand with him." At the same moment, Queen Ashriel of the Litheran Empire was watching the same feeds. Her bioluminescent skin shifted, reflecting her rising tension and wonder. This human had not only saved her child during the attack, but had become a symbol across the galaxy. And through some strange, almost mystical bond, she could feel him, not as a ruler feels a subject, but as one consciousness brushing against another. Hours earlier in the palace gardens, the attack had begun without warning. The human guard, Elias, had positioned himself between Princess Elra and the assassin. Steel flashed. 6 strikes tore through his body, and yet he stood, arms wrapping around the attacker, dragging them down until the palace guards arrived. His wounds were mortal by human standards, yet he lived. Queen Ashriel had been across the garden with diplomats when something unfamiliar tore through her mind. A violent, echoing pain, not physical but neural. She staggered, gasping, realizing that each strike on the human had created a resonance, a bridge between them. With every wound he received, the bond grew stronger. And now, hours later, she could still feel the faint pull of his consciousness. In the palace medical bay, Elias lay in a recovery pod, wrapped in regeneration mesh. Machines hummed, feeding fluids into his veins. Queen Ashriel watched silently from the observation window. Her chief counselor, Kellen, stepped close. "Your Majesty, the council is waiting. They are uneasy." "They can wait," she replied. Her skin pulsed slowly, controlled, but beneath it, her neural clusters burned. She could feel every shallow breath Elias took, every heartbeat, every twitch of his pain. This was new. No ruler in the Lithuanian Empire had ever felt so connected to someone outside the royal bloodline. The chief healer hesitated. "We believe, when the human shielded the princess, extreme neural stress combined with proximity. His nervous system has entangled with yours. It is unprecedented." "Entangled," the queen whispered. "Yes, each wound strengthened the connection." Ashriel remembered the first knife. The shock, the confusion, the strange sense of purpose that was not her own. With each strike, the feeling had grown clearer, not fear, but resolve. He had known he would die and had stepped forward anyway. That, the healer explained, was the human condition. Humans did this. Elias stirred. Consciousness returned, confusion blooming like static across their shared thoughts. The queen entered the room. He opened his eyes, brown and searching, and pain hit them both at once. "That," he muttered weakly, "was not in the contract." Despite herself, the queen felt amusement. "You should not speak." "Is the kid okay?" "My daughter lives," she said, "because of you." Elias' relief flooded through both of them. Her skin shifted color without permission. "Am I glowing because of me?" he asked. "Yes," the queen answered truthfully. "You took 6 wounds, why?" "He was behind me," he said. "That's the job." "No," the queen said softly. "That was not your job. You exceeded reason." "Humans do that," he said. Their consciousness flickered together again, the pain synchronized as they shifted. "Am I imagining this?" he asked. "You are not imagining it," she replied. That bond, their bond, was growing. And through it, humanity was stepping onto the galactic stage. Not with fleets, not with weapons, but with endurance, resolve, and willingness to sacrifice. Later, the council argued. Human presence was a liability, political weakness. Fragile, emotional, unpredictable, Elias sighed. "You say that like it's a bad thing." The queen moved to his side. He felt her concern before she spoke. "You should not be listening," she said. "Feels like I'm plugged into the room," he replied. The healer studied him. "Describe what you feel." "Like standing too close to a storm," Elias said. "Not painful, just loud. I can tell when someone's scared or angry." The council recoiled. The bond is spreading into him. "Yes," the healer admitted quietly. "Her neural complexity is rewriting parts of his perception. He is adapting. Humans always do." The realization hit the queen. Humans were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the smartest most of the time. But when something new hit them, they changed. They survived. They endured. The Dominion would learn this soon enough. Elias proposed a bold plan: become visible, be a symbol, draw attention. Humans were good at hunting threats they could not overpower, and now they would show the galaxy that endurance, courage, and connection could shift the balance of power. Ashriel authorized a public address. Videos of the attack, of the 6 wounds, of the child alive spread across the system. Responses were immediate: hope, outrage, and fear. Humans were not weak. Humans could endure. Somewhere between the stars, an ancient presence took notice. Humanity had arrived. And through the bond between human and queen, the first ripple of galactic change began. By nightfall, Elias collapsed in the palace medical wing, exhausted, yet resolute. Queen Ashriel sat beside him, feeling fragments of his life, his memories, his fears, and his determination. The bond had deepened beyond prediction. She understood for the first time that the galaxy would never be the same. And Elias' bleeding, battered human smiled faintly. "They underestimated us," he said, a spark of pride in his pain. "Yes," the queen agreed, "and they always will until it is too late." The stars outside the palace shone like witnesses. The first chapter of humanity's rise in the galaxy was over. But the war, the alliances, and the test of endurance had only just begun. The galaxy had changed in the span of a single cycle. Elias Ward, the human who had endured 6 lethal strikes to save a princess, had become more than a hero. He was now a symbol, a bridge between species, and a force the Dominion had never expected. Yet for all the recognition, the weight of what he represented pressed heavily upon him. In the palace of Lithra, Queen Ashriel moved through the corridors with purpose. Every step brought her closer to the command chamber, but every pulse of the bond reminded her of Elia's pain. She could feel his exhaustion, his hunger, his restless mind. It was a strange intimacy, one that no monarch had ever shared with an outsider. She did not regret it. She could not. "Your Majesty," Kellen whispered, catching up to her, "the Dominion is mobilizing. Their fleets are converging near the outer systems. If we do not act—" Ashriel raised a hand, stopping him. Her skin pulsed slowly, as if breathing with its own rhythm. "We will act," she said, "but not in the way they expect." Meanwhile, Elias lay in the medical bay, still recovering but unwilling to remain idle. His 6 wounds had healed imperfectly. Scars traced his body like a map of the battle that had changed everything. Yet he moved with quiet determination, assisted by the palace medics. "I need a plan," he muttered to the healer, tendrils of light pulsing gently around her. "Not just defense, something that shows them humanity cannot be controlled by fear." "You are asking for risk beyond your physiology," the healer warned. "The bond amplifies stress. Every decision you make resonates through the Queen's nervous system. You could collapse." Elias smirked faintly, despite the pain. Humans rarely survive the easy path. The council chamber buzzed with alien delegates, their chromatic skin flashing in irritation and alarm. The Keelthran Dominion had sent envoys, warning that the presence of Elia's ward destabilized the region. Neutral systems whispered about rebellion, trade routes froze, and the galaxy's balance wavered. Ashriel entered the chamber beside Elias, her bioluminescence radiating calm authority. Protocol demanded distance between monarch and foreigner, but the bond allowed them to move as one, a single pulse of confidence. She gestured for Elias to speak. "I am not a soldier," he said plainly. "I am not a commander. I am a human who stood in the way of violence. What you call destabilization is clarity. We survive by enduring, by learning, by acting when it matters most." A hush fell over the room. Alien delegates exchanged confused glances. Strength, as Elias had said, was not measured by weaponry alone. The first test came within cycles. A convoy of neutral traders near the Lithra border was attacked. Sensors recorded Dominion strike signatures masked as pirates. Panic should have spread, but Elias had already coordinated human analysts across the sector. Civilian traffic was rerouted, escape corridors opened, communications redirected. The strike hit empty ships. Evidence of violations was captured, documented, and broadcast. The council reeled. Aliens had expected chaos. Humans delivered order, precision, and transparency. "They adapt faster than predicted," Kellen muttered, watching the live streams. "Even under pressure, their coordination." "They endure," Elias finished. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with authority born from experience. The bond pulsed, and Ashriel felt the surge of focus and courage. Together, they were a single strategy, a human mind fused with alien instinct. The Dominion's next move was subtler. Messages flooded the Lithran system, covert threats, disguised sabotage attempts, and misinformation campaigns. Yet Elias, the Queen, and their human advisory network anticipated every step. Trade disruptions were corrected in real time. Diplomatic falsehoods were exposed instantly. For every strike, there was a countermeasure. And through it all, the bond grew stronger. Ashriel felt Elias' calculations before he made them. He sensed her hesitation and corrected it without words. Their shared thoughts formed a current that flowed between them, guiding strategy, diplomacy, and defense. But endurance had its limits. After weeks of near-constant engagement, Elias collapsed once more. Neural feedback surged violently through the bond. Ashriel doubled over beside him, feeling every nerve, every heartbeat, every flicker of pain. "Disconnect," the healer shouted. "He cannot sustain this." "No," Ashriel said, her voice steady despite the strain. She pressed a hand against his chest. "Not yet." Something ancient awoke in her. The Lithuanian Empire had forbidden monarchs from sharing neural power at this level, yet necessity had overridden law. Streams of energy flowed from her, stabilizing the bond. Elias gasped, systems adapting. "I'm okay," he whispered, and this time it was true. The human mind had endured what no alien body could, and the Queen had shared her strength to sustain him. Across the galaxy, the Dominion's carefully orchestrated threats were unmasked. Transparency, coordination, and endurance became the weapon humans wielded, and no fleet could match it. Within cycles, the Dominion's image collapsed. Allies withdrew support, neutral systems severed trade agreements, and factions within the Dominion argued over their strategy. Their superiority in fleet and weaponry meant nothing against truth, exposure, and human persistence. Elias, though still scarred, continued to move through the palace, now a public symbol of endurance. Citizens of Lithra and distant systems lined the streets to see him, some in fear, some in admiration, all in awe. Children of multiple species asked for his story. Merchants posted his image across communications networks. Humanity, for the first time, was recognized not as laborers or soldiers, but as equals. The bond with the Queen had evolved. No longer a bridge formed under duress, it was a shared current, a permanent connection of awareness and understanding. She felt fragments of his home world, gravity, dust, the smell of metal and heat, and he sensed the heartbeat of her empire, its history, and its neural networks. Together, they were a new kind of alliance. Diplomatic councils convened, first in doubt, then in respect. The sovereignty of the galaxy shifted subtly. Humans were no longer minor players. They were essential partners, capable of endurance that no alien culture could fully understand. And Elias, wounded but unbroken, embodied that truth. One evening, in the quiet of the medical wing, Elias prepared to depart. His assignment was technically complete, yet he lingered, not out of duty but because the bond, the connection, demanded it. "You could stay," Ashriel said softly. He smiled gently. "Someone else will need standing between danger and a child, but humanity will endure." She nodded. For the first time in her reign, the Queen understood the full measure of choice and strength. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not through firepower or fleet superiority, but through courage, endurance, and moral clarity, and that was a power no one could ignore. As he boarded the transport, she did something unprecedented. She embraced him. The bond pulsed warmly, not with pain, but with gratitude, respect, and permanence. The connection settled into a rhythm, a reminder that the galaxy was no longer a place of predictable hierarchies. Humans had proven that the measure of strength was not in dominance, but in the willingness to stand, endure, and act when it mattered most. Outside the palace, the city glowed under twin suns. Humans walked openly among Lithuanian citizens. Children played across species lines without fear. Political structures shifted toward merit-based representation. Human advisors were granted full standing in councils, their perspectives valued not as novelties but as essential insight. Months later, at the Convocation of Sovereigns, the highest gathering of the galaxy, Ashriel rose to speak. "Strength," she said, "has been misunderstood for too long. We believed it was weapons, armor, longevity, but true strength is choice. To stand when you could flee, to protect when you could preserve yourself." She gestured toward Elias, a human, unarmed, scarred, yet resolute. A human taught us this, not with words but with action. Elias stepped forward. "I am not special," he said plainly. "What I did was not unique. Any human would have acted the same. Our strength lies not in our bodies but in our willingness to endure, to learn, and to act when it matters most." The chamber fell silent. Then one by one, sovereigns nodded in recognition, understanding, and respect. A new compact was formed: mutual defense, transparent investigations, and shared intelligence networks with human systems at the core. Not because humans demanded it, but because the galaxy had witnessed the power of endurance. Back in the quiet of the medical wing, Ashriel watched Elias prepare to leave once more. "You don't have to stay," he said. "I choose to," she replied. The bond hummed gently, stable, no longer a storm but a shared rhythm. Humanity had entered the galaxy bleeding, but it had stayed through courage, endurance, and choice. As the transport lifted off, Elias glanced at her, a faint smile on his scarred face. "They underestimated us," he said. "Yes," she agreed, "and they always will until it is too late." The stars stretched endlessly before them. The galaxy had learned a new lesson. Strength was not power, but persistence. Humans did not need to be the strongest. They only needed to be willing to stand. And stand they did.